The night had settled thick over the open plains, a cold hush stretching across the Cowboys' ranch as if the world itself were, holding its breath, and inside the old wooden barn, where the scent of hay mixed with the faint chill of winter wind, seeping through the broken planks, a frightened Apache woman curled herself into the darkest corner she could find, her breath trembling, her hair tangled with dirt and dried, leaves from days spent running. Through the wilderness, she did not know whose land she had stumbled onto, nor if the man who owned this place would show mercy or raise a rifle, but she had nowhere left to run, her feet blistered, her clothes torn, and the echo of distant horsemen searching for her still ringing in her memory, like a curse she could not shake. And as she pressed her hand to her racing heartbeat, praying to spirits older than the land itself that she might survive just one more night, the barn door creaked open and a tall silhouette stepped inside, lantern in hand, its yellow glow crawling across the walls until it fell upon the trembling outline of the woman and the cowboy, Elias Granger, a man known around town not for violence but for a strange, quiet kindness that set him apart. From the rough cattlemen around him, froze as soon as he saw her, his eyes narrowing not in anger but in concern, for he could see her ribs through her torn shirt, could see the way her shoulders shook with exhaustion, could see the dried blood at her temple as if she'd crashed through brush and branches trying to outrun some unseen terror. And when he took a step closer, she tried to scramble farther back, her voice cracking as she whispered in fear. But before she could form the words, Elias lifted one hand slowly, palm open, the universal sign of peace, and said in a calm, steady voice that somehow cut through the biting cold, "I'm not here to hurt you." And the woman blinked, confused, uncertain whether to believe him. For most cowboys she encountered only looked at her people with suspicion or hatred. But something in his voice, soft, yet firm, made her hold still long, enough for him to kneel in front of her, setting the lantern down so its warm glow spread around them like a fragile shield, revealing her scraped skin, her bleeding feet, the fear carved into her eyes. And in that moment, Elias felt something shift deep inside him, as if fate itself had placed her in his care. And without thinking further, he shrugged off his coat and offered it to her. But she, stubborn and proud despite her fear, shook her head weakly as if refusing to show weakness. Yet her body betrayed her as she shivered uncontrollably, prompting Elias to gently drape the coat around her shoulders anyway. And when she finally whispered her name, Ayanna, it carried the weight of someone who had been running far too long, and Elias, who had seen enough cruelty on the frontier to know when someone had been wronged, realized she wasn't merely lost. She was hunted, and not by animals but by men, the kind who believed they held dominion over everything and everyone, especially vulnerable native women. And when Ayanna's voice cracked as she tried to explain she'd been hiding for 2 days after escaping men who intended to sell her, Elias felt a hot surge of anger rise inside him. But he kept his voice calm for her sake, saying, "You're safe here," though the truth was he wasn't entirely sure if that would remain true once sunrise came. For people in town talked, and rumors traveled faster than smoke on the wind. But something deep inside him told him he would rather stand, alone against the world, than hand, her back to the monsters chasing her. And as he helped her stand, her legs nearly giving out from exhaustion, he felt how light she was, how malnourished, how desperately she needed rest, warmth, and safety, and without giving her a chance to argue, he met her frightened eyes with steady determination and uttered the words that would change both their lives forever. "Pack your things. You're coming home with me." Ayanna stared at him as though she hadn't heard correctly, confusion and disbelief swirling in her gaze, because no cowboy had ever spoken to her with such certainty, such protection, such unexpected gentleness. And she tried to protest, weakly insisting she had no things to pack, no home to return to, that she'd only bring danger to his doorstep. But Elias shook his head firmly, lifting her into his arms as she swayed again, telling her that some homes weren't built from walls or bloodlines, but from the choices people made to stand for what was right. And as he carried her out of the barn into the cold night, the stars shining like watchful ancestors above them, Ayanna felt something she hadn't felt in months, safety. And she let her head rest, against his shoulder, her tears soaking into his shirt, not because she feared him, but because she could not remember the last time someone treated her as a human being instead of something to be chased, bought, or claimed. And Elias, feeling her tremble, whispered that he didn't know who was hunting her. But he knew one thing for certain. They would have to go through him now, and he wasn't planning on letting anyone lay a hand on her again. And as his boots crunched against the frost-covered ground, carrying her toward the warm light spilling from his cabin, the wind seemed to soften, almost as if the land itself approved of the unlikely alliance, forming between the weary cowboy and the wounded Apache woman. And though neither of them knew what dangers tomorrow would bring, one truth settled between them like a promise. This meeting wasn't an accident. It was destiny beginning to take shape, and their story was only just starting. So if you're feeling the emotion of this moment, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the powerful continuation of this journey where courage, compassion, and fate collide.